I will defeat the Powerpuff Girls, or my name isn't Mojo Projo.
Kuja Genome Sorcerer versus Ayara, Faldorn, and Sin. Haven't played against Sin yet, so hopefully that'll be a good showing here. We've got plenty of mana, some card draw to try to actually accelerate the mana, so I think I'll try and keep this. Turn 1 play for the black player with a blood-soaked champion. We draw into Terminate, so let's draw some cards with Faithless Looting. Dig some cards deeper here. Alright, get into another land and an Arcane Signet which we can play next turn, so let's see the back of... I think the Dragonstorm Summit and the Rakdos Charm can go down. Aftermath Analyst comes in and mills 4, I think. No, mill 3. So there's a fetch in the bin, Finale of Devastation, Life from the Loam's a good one to hit, and another land. And we saw cast here a Search for Tomorrow, got down a Sol Ring. Haven't seen any red mana for this player yet though, but I'm sure Nature's Law will fix that. If our opponent keeps going at this pace, he's not going to have any cards left in hand to discard. Reliquary Tower for the black player means we might not see a turn 3 Ayara. Bloodsoaked Champion can't block, so it might as well swing in and it goes down the middle. Not worthy there's a card that's been foretold as well. So I would always assume that that would be the red Wrath that deals 5 damage to everything at instant speed. Alright, yet another land for us, so we'll get a couple of basics in so that the Smouldering Marsh comes in untapped. Arcane Signet. Decided to dredge the Life from the Loam out of the bin, so there's Icy, Watery Grave and a Gaia's Cradle. This is bracket 3, so should only see 3 game changes from each list, and White of the Reliquary comes into play. This player scoops because it's Magic Online, and then we get hit for 2 by the champion. And Ophiomancer is going to make a Death Touching Snake during every turn, assuming he doesn't control the snake already. But he's obviously going for the aristocrat theme of constantly having sack fodder. And we get into our first wizard, Black Waltz number 3. So do we want to play this or our commander? I suppose we could play this into some kind of board wipe. Problem is we're allowing this to untap or come back round without summoning sickness. Yeah, we need this guy to continue to be a threat. There's an argument to be made for blowing this up so he doesn't accelerate ahead on lands. Yeah, I think it might be an idea to try and slow that guy down. Yeah, I'm just going to go for the Kuja instead, because then we get to cast the non-creature spells into the black mages. Obviously the sooner we get the commander out, the more of these we can make over the course of a few turn cycles. A couple of lands sacrificed in order to get down the Lotus Veil, and that taps down for mana straight away. Activating the Aftermath Analyst, and you see why I wanted to blow this up now. It was even worse than I thought it was going to be. But they were always going to get Gaia's Cradle. They've got Life from the Loam in hand. And they can shoot her out with this as well. Although they're going to need another creature in play before they do that. Ayara makes it down by turn 4. So drains us all for 1. And might as well hold back here because he's up against a 3-4 and a 4-4. Alright, so we've got Night's Whisper. I think it would be an idea to hold up the Terminate at the very least. Maybe it's worth a Night's Whisper. So let me go for that first. We will ping each of our opponents once with the 1 black mage we've managed to make so far. And that gets us into a Desperate Ritual, which will help us not quite storm off, but get more spells on the stack. The 1 ring as well, I don't mind seeing. I want to hold off on Urborg for as long as I can because it might help this player. Both players actually. So yeah, probably go for a Surveil land with the Marsh Flats and Terminate. We could terminate in response to a creature coming into this. So we'll pass at that and make another Black Mage token before we cast the Terminate on a following turn here. A Lotus Cobra. Would I rather blow up the Lotus Cobra than this thing? I think this tutoring so consistently is going to be an issue. Although they're not going to sack the Lotus Cobra to it, are they? So I think I let this in, try and get a bit more information. So cracks Windswept Heath into the Cobra to make a mana. Okay, a Necromancy. That could get the Aftermath Analyst back. Or the Icy is probably what they're after. They've only got 4 cards in hand. I think I'd rather blow up the Icy, to be honest. They've already got one of the most powerful lands in the game. So they're going to get 1 land here, but it will put a trigger on the stack, so they can't just dump all their lands into play without handing priority over. Hopefully it's not a fetch. They look like they're casting something else first, actually. Okay, a River Kelpie. Funny that they didn't cast that before getting the Icy down. Alright, well, we'll go for the Terminate onto this now. And so this will shock our opponents with the wizard tokens. And our opponent might as well, I suppose, sacrifice it here to White of the Reliquary to grab a land. But we got the Necromancy out of their hand at least. And the land coming in obviously won't trigger for the card draw either. Grabs himself an Urborg. I won't feel too bad about playing mine now. Okay, gets himself into a World Shaper as well. So that will reanimate all the lands. Only 2 cards in hand though, but plenty of mana. But we got rid of his means of refilling his hand. Apart from the River Kelpie, that is. So we'll have to be careful. Faithless Looting will trigger that. It's whenever we cast a spell from a graveyard. Triggers on any player. Yawgmoth Physician is a scary one. Especially when tied up with the Ophiomancer and that consistent snake token. So I suppose we'll see what our opponent's most scared of here. And the snake token swings into the left, so he's obviously looking at Sin. And then sacks it to the Ayara as opposed to the Yawgmoth in order to draw a card. He's got 6 cards, 4 lands by turn 5. I'm sure he's eager to find his Cabal coffers. Alright, sacrifices the Blood-Soaked Champion to the Yawgmoth in order to put a minus counter on Lotus Cobra. Goes up to 7 in hand with that. And still hasn't made a land. So we'll go for a Surveil. And it's another land on top, so that can go in the bin. Ophiomancer makes the snake again, ready for Yawgmoth to draw and put something onto it. We are drained by Ayara with tokens as well. And just draw into another land. Might as well get down... Well, how much mana are we going to spend? Black Waltz number 3 we could get down here and then cast Faithless Looting off the back of Desperate Ritual. That would cast a few spells and maybe Yawgmoth would try to deal with this and draw the attention away from our wizard tokens. Yeah, could go for that I think. So let's cast Desperate Ritual after that. We're going to deal 4 damage to our opponents. This might encourage the Yawgmoth to do something is the problem. But we're seeing what the deck wants to do here at least. And we've got the Sultai player down to 27. He's going to draw a card to our Faithless Looting here, which is not card advantage, unlike that River Kelpie. So draws a card when we cast that. Simply just trying to look at more cards here. We can soon refill with the One Ring and Will of the Jeskai. And clear more lands off the top, that's fine by me, so that's easy. Discard both of those. This is why Loot is so much better than Rummage. You can look at the card you draw before deciding to discard. So we will leave it at that. Nearly got Sin down to the halfway mark. And making another wizard token. We're not playing at instant speed at least. And that does mean that Trance Kuja is probably not going to make it round the table, but we'll get double the damage from all this stuff. And Yawgmoth decided to blow something up there. Oh, it was the tapped wizard token, so any non-creature spell that we cast would have been 2 damage times 3. This will deal 4, so I'll be very surprised if this survives. But I suppose he could take care of all of our wizard tokens by the next turn cycle. So instead of the One Ring, Will of the Jeskai might be the thing so that we can terminate this. Sacrificing the River Kelpie, and it comes back in with a minus counter thanks to Persist in order to go and tutor a land. So that entered from the graveyard and draws on its own ability and grabs his own Cabal coffers. And then a Decree of Pain to blow it all up just in time to not see the benefit of Trance Kuja. But I suppose we wanted to see the back of Yawgmoth anyway, so everything's going to die here regardless and refill. Well, the black player already has 8 cards in hand, but it's going to draw even more. Which means that the Decree of Pain isn't going to see as many creatures die, and therefore draw less. Can't see, there's not too many lands, only 1 fetch in the bin here, so World Shaper won't see too much of a benefit from that. Surprised he didn't swing in with this beforehand. And then Deadly Rollick. Does that come from the black player while his commander's in play? Wants to see rid of the Black Waltz number 3. I'm surprised to see a Deadly Rollick. Kind of seems like a waste to me. But maybe he's got really good cards in hand and he doesn't want to discard too many of them without using them. And we will return our commander back to the command zone. Curious, he sacrificed with Yawgmoth his Ayara. And kept the Ayara in play, so hopefully we don't see a Living Death next turn, because that would mean that I should have put Kuja in the graveyard. That might be the reason that he went to exile this. Hedge Spider is really good, haven't seen it played too much, but Yeah, in a self-mill deck, you should get a lot of lands off this, which our opponent doesn't seem to be struggling too much on anyway. 7 cards in hand after that board wipe. Wayfarer's Bauble suggests that he doesn't want to go for the Living Death. So that will give us chance, potentially. We could go for Will of the Jeskai, refill our hand, and maybe we should go Rakdos Charm to exile a target player's graveyard before we see the Yawgmoth show up again. Seems as though with all that card draw he didn't get into another land, which is what he would have needed for a 5 mana Living Death. Problem is we'd be giving up on the One Ring. Okay, a Reanimate onto the Icy, just helping us with our burn strategy. He goes down to 22. And there's a Liquimetal Torque, so can accelerate a little bit. Let's drop Urborg as the land for the turn. And I'd love to go for the One Ring, but I don't trust that our opponent doesn't have Living Death, like I keep saying, and this doesn't force him to discard it. It's each player may discard their hand and draw 5. Do I want to continue to deal with Yawgmoth? I don't think so. But I think the One Ring might be the thing that gets us out of this predicament, so yeah, I'm going to go for the Liquimetal Torque and get my commander down again, even though it's likely going to have to be sacrificed if our prediction is correct. 7 cards in this player's hand. He gets down Yavimaya to make all the lands tap for green and black. 13 mana generated off the Cabal coffers. And there is a Yarok the Desecrated going to double up on ETBs. And it's Massacre Worm, -4 on everything, so it's just going to be another one of those Magic Online games where you can't keep your creatures in play. You might have noticed that I've started to get a lot of games in where they just end in one of my combos, and you see the reason why that is sometimes. You can't always play fair Magic on Magic Online. I'm just going to risk keeping my Kuja in the bin here. It's a bit of a gamble. Might be that he just has Animate Dead or something for his commander. Beast Within encourages him to use the Living Death we think he has. Down to 4 cards again already. And there is Sin, Spira's Punishment into play again straight away. So exile a permanent from your graveyard. That's done at random. Just so happens to get himself the Icy. And there is the Lotus Cobra as well. He got 2 triggers off the Yarok, of course. So the tactic really is self-mill, get all your lands out, and then you've got a better chance of exiling decent permanents with this. A Kodama's Reach is going to trigger both of his landfall effects, and they'll trigger twice each, so 2 mana off the Lotus Cobra, 2 cards drawn from Icy. We managed to delay this thing for a couple of turns at least. It did give free reign to the Yawgmoth, however, our Terminate not being free. So he jumps back up to 6, and that is Lightning Greaves onto the commander, which is a flying 7/7. And so they'll get another trigger here, deciding to crew on the Head Shredder. So that's a 5/5, and you mill 2 when it attacks. So they'll get some free lands here potentially. I think they tap down the Worm in order to crew it, deciding to mill 2 first. Milled a couple of non-lands in a Sol Ring and the Mycor Tyrant. And they got a token copy from the Sin of River Kelpie. And we go down to 20. I think we took both the attacks there. Life from the Loam, grab some lands from the bin. I assume they're at 4 cards in hand. Maybe there were no lands left and they just decided to use that for dredge. Anyway, the black player down to 15 with just a beast token to his name. Okay, awesome. And we'll never know what he had in hand because he just decides to scoop on us. I'm glad I kept the One Ring now, but I've no idea how we're going to fish this out of the bin. Let's go for the One Ring. This will give us protection for our next turn. We might as well draw a card. And that is Deadly Relic we will have to pay for. Let's go Cornered by Black Mages and get a... we could go for Will of the Jeskai instead actually. But I'd rather be able to actually cast spells from it. So it'll just have to be Cornered by Black Mages, I think. And he's got 4 cards in hand. Let's hard cast the Deadly Relic onto the token. The Icy token. Have him draw fewer cards. Head Shredder, they must have dredged, yeah, the Life from the Loam. So Head Shredder has seen some lands, can't keep the graveyards open, whatever, there's some cards in the graveyard and they've come back out, or one of them has. A Forest triggered the River Kelpie to draw a couple, Lotus Cobra to add a couple of mana. This is during the draw phase, so they won't necessarily be able to use that mana. Okay, adding 15 during the draw phase with the Cabal coffers. And then deciding to undo it, they must have thought they were in the main. So they've got a full grip, along with Gaia's Cradle and Cabal Coffers. Play Fabled Passage, that will make 2 mana twice if they decide to crack it with Lotus Cobra. And now it's Runescarred Demon for a tutor. I'm not sure it's bracket 3 my opponent's built here. Breach the Multiverse mills our library. We don't have that many great creatures in here, so not as worried about that. I'm just hoping that we don't see... Yeah, it doesn't look as though we're seeing Mizzix's Mastery. That could be a thing that digs us out of this. Although with it being bracket 3, I don't think I put any tutors in here for it, so the chances of drawing into it aren't all that great. Fishing out our Kuja from the graveyard means that at least it could go back into the command zone. They've got back their own Tatyova as well as drawing a bunch and milling their own lands and stuff, you know. As soon as the lands get milled straight into the graveyard, they come back out straight away, so I'm glad that we get to see the power of this thing. I think most of us knew it when it got spoiled, and we're seeing it in action here. So easily getting the landfall triggers, which is filling up their hand and making a bunch of mana. He is gaining life from Tatyova as well, so he goes back up to 26, 18 cards in hand at the moment. Only 34 left in the library though. Parallel Lives makes twice the tokens, which means Sin will make 2 of them, and it will have the tokens trigger twice each from the Yarok, assuming they're ETBs. I got down an Amulet of Vigor to make the tokens enter untapped, or any tap permanent enter untapped. Manages to get himself into a couple of necromancies. He untaps the tap permanents twice, which will be relevant with lands. He'll be able to float mana with those. So with the first necromancy resolution, he gets himself a Myco Tyrant. Entering from the bin means that the River Kelpie draws twice. Missed on the other one, so he must only have a select few number of creatures he wants to grab, although I saw a Hedron Crab and an E-Witness there, so maybe he targeted Myco Tyrant twice to make one of them fizzle. Anyway, Colossal Grave Reaver. Whenever this enters or attacks, mill 3, and of course that triggers twice as well, so he effectively mills 6. River Kelpie draws twice, and he's being forced on these draws here, so if he keeps going off as much, then he is going to be forced to draw into an empty library if he's not careful, because as he mills, he's going to mill into the Head Shredder. The Head Shredder gets him free lands. The free lands from the bin enter for Tatyova and get double card draw, so yeah, we see how the deck functions, but it's potentially going to be his downfall if we have a bit of luck. Managed to get himself into a Field of the Dead now as well, which is well and truly online, and every land entering it makes 2 zombies, as well as untapping twice, so we'll see if he decides to float mana with that. So here, Amulet of Vigor resolves once. He decided not to float the mana from Field of the Dead. Seems to be doing alright on mana anyway. I don't think he has a Reliquary Tower in play. Maybe he wants to dump most of his cards into the bin anyhow. He might have an Eldrazi or something to keep from decking himself. He's managed to mill himself into more lands though, so he's down to 18 cards in hand. There is a Mossborn Hydra, and he got the Mossborn Hydra for free from the Grave Reaver. So of course it's rinse and repeat, he's getting double the plus counters, so of course it's rinse and repeat here, and you have to assume that he's got counter magic back up to all this with now 30 cards in hand. Hasn't had his last necromancy trigger resolve yet. Okay, and that does not reanimate something. I'm just wondering, maybe you can only target the same creature twice, because it will fizzle itself and one of them will fall off and kill the other. I don't know. Can't remember how this works with double triggers, but if it's not enchanting a creature, then surely the other one dies. Anyway, we obviously don't take commander damage because we have protection from the One Ring. Kuja makes a Black Mage at the end of the turn. Myco Tyrant will make Fungus. And I'm guessing he descended a hell of a lot because this cares about permanence, which is lands and creatures. So, yeah, he gets 26 Fungus tokens there. 14 cards left in his library. And the Black Mages do enter tapped, so they will untap. Wouldn't mind blowing up and reanimating the Massacre Worm myself here, because that would likely take our opponent down. All depends on if he runs counter magic though, which I'm sure he does. So we'll take our damage from the One Ring. I think I will go for the wheel first, and then draw with the One Ring and see if there's anything we can actually do this game. Whip of Erebos with the Black Mages in play is a little bit of a cute combo, but not really all that imperative. It's a little bit win more, to be honest. We could only reanimate a creature from our graveyard anyway. Yeah, so we couldn't go after the Massacre Worm and reanimate that. So let's go for Will of the Jeskai, and we'll have to just go for the wheel and not go for the flashback. And our opponent is holding up priority, so just a case of awaiting the counterspell at this point. And yeah, we were never doing anything, were we? It is a Thought Vessel, read the bones, let's draw a couple of cards with the One Ring. And it's into Harmonic Prodigy and Circle of Power. These are the cards that we wanted to see in the early game, really. Yeah, let's just go read the bones here. Might still be that we can get into Toxic Deluge and a Sol Ring. There's Professor Onyx. Believe it or not, the point in this deck is casting non-creature spells into effects that burn your opponent. We've seen absolutely nothing of that this game. Pact of the Serpent, we've got no wizards in play whatsoever. So bottom both of these. And there we go, we got into it eventually. I'm not sure Mizzix's Mastery could really have helped us at this point anyway. But yeah, get down the tap land, tap out and pass. And hopefully our opponent is respectful to us and just turns sideways. I'm sure he doesn't need to play with his food too much. He does have an unlimited hand size, I've noticed. There must be some other permanent that I'm forgetting about. Alright, he is respectfully going through to attacks in all fairness. And there we are, we go down to minus 52 on pretty much the tokens alone. So yeah, so absolutely nothing of our commander, but we did at least get to see one of the Final Fantasy commanders go off in Sin Spira's Punishment. I think judging by that, sometimes decks can go off a lot better than they usually would, but judging by that game alone, it's way too powerful a deck for us. Kuja isn't really for multiplayer, I don't think, because it's just going to be too difficult to keep your army of black mages in play unless you're in like a slower paced bracket 1 or 2 game perhaps. But obviously you need to actually draw into the cards you need as well. But glad we got to show off Sin from Final Fantasy X action as well, so hopefully you all enjoyed that one. If you do want to see Kuja again, then as ever it will need support on the like button and the comment section. I am meaning to get round to a couple of the Final Fantasy commanders I've already run again, but there's just so many legends to cover in this set. Anyway, I'll leave you there. Thank you to all the patrons for their support of the channel. You can do so yourself via the link in the description. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.